And there are, of course, a few other foods that we could include in the starchy corner of our plate, like green peas or even fresh corn. Now, importantly, those foods don't need to be plain. They can be seasoned, they can be incorporated into a dish, like adding some canned beans to your favorite chopped salad, or the rice or noodles in some chicken soup, the noodles in general in a pasta dish, the rice that you might serve with a stir fry, or the quinoa or amaranth in a Mediterranean bowl. Hit me, Producer Potts.
Dr. Sarah, it can be really easy for us automatically to think about restricting carbs this time of year versus nourishing ourselves with the nutrients our bodies need. However, you have said it's important to make sure we include starchy foods at every meal. Can you remind us why that is so important when we're looking at our overall long-term health?
Yeah, so there's lots of reasons why higher carbohydrate consumption is actually beneficial, especially when those carbohydrates are coming from whole food sources of carbohydrates, like whole grains and legumes and root vegetables and fruit. Those are all foods that are our best food sources of fiber. They're packed with vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients, and they are all associated with better long-term health outcomes. But so is just moderate carbohydrate consumption. The accepted macronutrient distribution range for carbohydrates is 45 to 65% of our total calories. Now, the accepted macronutrient distribution ranges are set by the Food and Nutrition Board of the Institute of Medicine. And the incredibly huge body of scientific literature that they look at to set these ranges include not just epidemiological studies, but also intervention trials. And they're looking at what is optimal to prevent disease, as well as what makes sense to ensure sufficient intake of essential nutrients, like all the fiber, vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients found in fruit, root vegetables, legumes, and whole grains. And in fact, a 2020 systematic review showed that diets that were outside of the accepted macronutrient distribution ranges for protein, carbohydrates, and fat, especially low-carb, high-fat diets, increased all-cause mortality, which is an indirect measure of overall health and longevity, meaning that diets outside of balanced macronutrients, the happy medium for protein, carbs, and fat, lead to, on average, worse health outcomes. Now, we're often sold low-carb diets as the key to weight loss. And definitely eating more whole foods can fill you up for fewer calories. But that doesn't have to be a low-carb diet. And in fact, really well-controlled metabolic ward clinical trials have shown that low-carb and ketogenic diets do not turn us into fat-burning machines. If anything, they do the opposite, with more loss of muscle mass compared to a diet with balanced macronutrients and the same amount of calories. Plus, if you have some kind of fitness goals as part of your New Year's resolutions, eating more carbohydrates can support athletic performance and muscle recovery. So upping carbohydrates, but making sure that most of our carbs are coming from whole foods can help to support fat loss goals while supporting the retention of lean mass, which is very important for preserving basal metabolic rate, can help us reach our fitness goals and supports overall long-term health.
Wow, thank you so much for the reminder for us not to avoid starchy foods. So I've been using your Nutrivore weekly survey matrix, and you have a section on there for starchy foods. Can you walk us through what foods would be in that starchy food category and how much we should be eating of them, like some different examples of portion sizes?
Absolutely. So ideally, about a quarter of every meal would be starchy foods, which translates to 1 to 2 servings. Whether we're talking about root vegetables, grains, or legumes, a serving is defined as 1/2 cup cooked. So that translates to about an ounce for a dried bean or a whole grain, and it translates to about a cup for root vegetables when you're measuring them raw. So for some examples, we categorize lots of things that aren't technically roots in the root vegetable category. But starchy options would include potatoes, sweet potatoes, taro, cassava, parsnips, all the different types of winter squash. We would include green plantains in this category, even though technically they are a fruit. I guess winter squash is a fruit too. For grains, again, preferably they would be whole, and we would include both grains and pseudograins here. So foods like brown rice, quinoa, farro, millet, bulgur, buckwheat, wild rice, amaranth, and teff. And then for legumes, we would include all the different types of lentils, chickpeas, aka garbanzo beans, and the full range of beans that you can find either dried or canned, like black beans, kidney beans, pinto beans, cannellini beans, split peas, navy beans, black-eyed peas, adzuki beans, cranberry beans, anasazi beans. And there are, of course, a few other foods that we could include in the starchy corner of our plate, like green peas or even fresh corn. Now, importantly, those foods don't need to be plain. They can be seasoned. They can be incorporated into a dish, like adding some canned beans to your favorite chopped salad, or the rice or noodles in some chicken soup, the noodles in general in a pasta dish, the rice that you might serve with a stir fry, or the quinoa or amaranth in a Mediterranean bowl. And there are some really cool like food crosses here, like all of the legume-based pasta options that are out there now, like edamame pasta, lentil pasta, chickpea pasta. Those are taking the place of a grain, but they're actually a legume. They're more nutrient dense, and then they can form the basis of a bigger dish where you're getting your protein foods and your vegetables as well. So there's lots of creative ways to get that starchy quarter of our plate incorporated into a meal.
Wow, Dr. Sarah, thank you so much for breaking this all down for us. And for those interested in using your Nutrivore Weekly Serving Matrix, which has been a complete game changer for me, where can people find that?
The Nutrivore Weekly Serving Matrix is both included in my book. It is the visual summary of a huge amount of information, the what's, the hows, and the whys. And you can also get it, if you would prefer, as a digital resource directly from Nutrivore.com. So either way, you're going to get some food lists and the frequently asked questions answered, and a really simple to use checklist to keep track of your nutrient density.